It's hard to believe that it has been 8 years since the last Persona game. Persona 4 came out in 2008, and while Persona 5 obviously wasn't in development the entirety of that time, development only started after 2011's Catherine, such a big break has really allowed them to evolve the formula, skipping a generation almost entirely. Persona 5 is, well, Persona 5, not Shin Megami Tensei Persona 5, but Persona 5. It is now its own thing. The Persona series has risen above the level of what it used to be simply an offshoot of, and is now its own genre, and one of the most popular JRPG genres in the world. And after the wait, Persona 5 is definitely a game that you want to be having on your radar. And after the wait, I can only say Persona 5 is certainly a game that demands your attention, doing so many things that both evolve the original formula, harken back to the very earliest Shin Megami Tensei games, and does so many things that make it one of the best RPGs of the decade easily. But before I even jump into this, I just want to give a little warning. Now, this isn't going to involve spoilers of any kind, and I've seen multiple takedowns of people who've actually tried to show footage from later on in the game, so the footage I use in this review will be limited, as will my actual talk of the plot overall. Now, if you want to talk about that, that's what the comments are for, and I will try to answer questions as best I can, but I don't want to spoil anything for the plot of this game, and I really think you should go in blind as well. And so for that reason, the plot isn't going to get much of a mention when it comes to this review, but I will talk about its parallels to the previous Persona games, because they all follow specific plot beats that play out the same, and this works for both Persona 3, 4 and now 5. So ultimately, I don't think anyone's going to be surprised to find out that Persona 5 plays out in two different ways depending on what you're trying to do. You have the various social structure aspects of the game that involves you going to school, hanging out with friends, learning, making social links, or cooperation as it's called in this game, and this allows you to build your abilities, what you have access to in terms of equipment, and extra powers and buffs you can use as part of your battles when you go into the actual dungeons of the game. But it's clear that as inspirations go, unlike the macabre sense of Persona 3 and the bright colourful TV world of Persona 4, Persona 5 is drenched in red, and while I thought this might have originally been something to do with blood, it's actually, and perhaps unsurprisingly, to do with passion and heart, and that's what the idea of the game is. You are a thief. The whole game works around thievery, and for that reason the stealth aspects of the game as well. But the objective of the game is to steal people's hearts, and through that do redemption. Redemption and reformation is perhaps the biggest aspects of Persona 5, and it all starts early on with your character, who's determined to protect someone at the start of the game, ultimately ends up on probation for, well, assault charges because he tried to do the right thing, and for that your probation and rehabilitation starts, and that's what you're essentially doing to every character in the game. Just like how it works in Persona 4, you'll have to rehabilitate the characters who go on to become your friends and party members as well. Ultimately, you're a thief, and the game is very much inspired by that. You have to go around, you have to steal, you have to be stealthy. You're stealing people's hearts, but in that, a negative thing, you're actually taking a positive. By stealing the malice, the hatred, and all the evil from their heart, you're reforming them, you're making them good, and that allows them to move forward in a different light, in a rehabilitated light, and do something positive with their abilities. And it's actually nice to see something that focuses on the heist, because there aren't many games that really focus on the heist aspects of things anyway, and it is actually quite popular in current pop culture anyway. But perhaps it's really on the gameplay you'd like to know about, and aside from a few jarring changes, mostly with the UI that takes a little bit of getting used to, but ultimately is making for one of the most simplistic UIs I've seen in a long time, Persona 5's gameplay is pretty spectacular. It tries so many more things compared to the previous Persona games, and while not all of them are perfect, like the stealth system, which is functional but not always perfect, it really does feel like that's the only downside I can actually say about the game. When you're not exploring dungeons, you're travelling around making your social links in a world that really feels real, and that is because it's based on real life locations mixed cleverly with fictional locations, but it also is the scale of the world as well that makes it come alive. Your characters are fully realistic, very much like how they were in Catherine. They have realistic proportions, they have emotions, they have feelings to them. The animations bring them alive, and as you're walking around as well, the scale of the buildings bring the world alive too. The big modern areas of the city really stand out as you look around and you see the scale of everything. The subway, the inner city levels and the suburbs equally look low in verticality because they want to bring out a different kind of feel for that architecture, and it really does evoke different feelings depending on where you go in the game. And you'll be doing a lot of travelling around as well because you want to make as many cooperation links as possible. It's not just with your main party members, but it's other members as well, and doing these different links is what actually affects the different kinds of dungeons you get in the story, of which case there's two. You have your main story dungeons that are very much lovingly created there, scripted dungeons. They're not randomly generated, they're made for you to explore and navigate around. They have shortcuts, they have extras, and they have secrets to find, and it makes for fantastic experiences when you're working your way through these, because they are very much the quintessential Zelda style dungeon that you have to know what you're doing and learn about the areas you're going in. You have to avoid enemy detection, and that's very much the key to the game when you're not in battle as well. When you're unfortunately detected by enemies, you do have the option to jump into battle to quickly negate the threat, and unfortunately if you get caught too many times, you will find yourself getting thrown out of the dungeon. It's just like an actual heist, and for the first time it's more than just being seen and chased by an enemy. There are more ramifications to it, so you want to be as stealthy as possible. You are thieves after all. Of course, this is coupled with the randomly generated dungeons as well that are based on the requests of other non-as-important characters you create social links with. And these are great, but they're not nearly the highlights, simply because it is those big scripted, well-built dungeons that really make up the focus of the game. And the game doesn't really want you to be going around grinding. The game is well paced enough that there should never be a big issue for you, and really any grinding you're going to do is likely to be just because you enjoy the game more than an actual necessity to do it. If you want to level personas, find more personas, or just explore, get more items and etc., then well, feel free to. You are going to end up with a big party anyway, so you're going to want to go back and level up other characters as you go. But other than that, there's not the biggest need to, and you could just pick your favourites and go forward if you really want to. Of course, with all that, this is nothing to say of what the actual battles in Persona were, and this is where not only does it bring new modernised combat into the series, it also harkens back to the very early Shin Megami Tensei games too. Battles seemingly play out just like they did in Persona 3 and 4. However, there are a few little extra caveats as well. Obviously, you have the ability to knock down an enemy and go in for an all-out attack, but that's not the only option you have when that happens now. You can find that you can also enter negotiation in with them too, and this is where it goes back to the original Tensei games, where you can negotiate in order to get a new persona. But it also can flip the tables on you, because if your party get knocked down, the enemy shadows can actually kidnap your party too, and you're going to have to fight to get them back. This is where the only multiplayer aspect of the game comes in. I say multiplayer, more online. You have the online system similar to Persona 4 Golden, and you can gain help from that when you find yourself a member down in your party, and that way it helps you just get them back a little bit easier. But beyond that, there's not so much to that online component that makes it worth more than a simple mention, and it's the only real area that really comes into play as aiding you as the player. But as you improve throughout the game and your party grows, you'll find yourself with access to a much bigger range of abilities and personas, and just like other Persona games, you find yourself heading back to the Velvet Room where you can fuse personas, make more, and do various other social aspects and things of the game. In these respects, it's just following the traditional Persona template formula, and really if it's not broken, you don't fix it. Throughout the story as well, there's still various aspects of how the structure of the story works that really mirrors how it's worked in previous games, most notably Persona 4, and I feel like with such a great winning formula, they didn't want to stray too far from it at times. They've upgraded how everything works, and they've expanded with the social link systems and the architecture of the game. The Velvet Room is very much the staple of the game, and the main story really works in arcs, where it starts off with actually creating your characters. Before something goes off the rails, you're thrust into a situation where, very much like a thief, you find yourself having to go into hiding, and also naturally there's a detective that comes along as well who goes in to play a major role. So you can certainly see the elements of Persona 4 and other Persona games that have had an impact in development. But ultimately, Persona 5 is amazing, and you can so easily sink so many hours into it and still feel like you want to jump right back in for another go once it's done. I wholeheartedly implore you to not think about importing this game if your Japanese is not up to scruff. Wait around, avoid the spoilers, and simply get the game when it comes out. It's an amazing experience that I can't wait to see what they actually do with the localized version. And if the other Persona games are anything to go by, it's not going to be long before we're getting Persona 5 Arena and Persona 3, 4, 5 Labyrinth of, I don't know, Redemption or something like that. More spin-offs with these characters interacting with previous Persona characters. But for now, Persona 5 is going to be a JRPG that's going to be talked about for a good long while, and is very possibly likely to eclipse any other offering any company comes along with. Delays have certainly been worthwhile and waiting for, and it's only up the quality of the game. Persona 5 is JRPG, if not Game of the Year, and maybe more than just that. Either way, wait for it to come out, get it, play it, enjoy it, and it's been a long time since we've had a game that's lived up to the hype. So, well done Persona.
何がきっかけで変わっちゃうの？俺たちは何を間違えたんだ？もう手遅れなんだよ。こいつらやべえ。
所詮俗人どもの遠吠えだ。
おとなしくしていればいいもの。まあ近々始末する予定でしたからな。
いよいよだ。お前の更生が始まる。ようこそ私のベルベット